practice, because obviously they failed. And we've been talking to them not just in the last 2 weeks, but many, many times over the last many years as we talk to cities across the country constantly with respect to what they're doing. And I asked them, we have a challenge in Austin. Now, to put that in perspective, our homeless count went up by 4% last year in Austin. 4%. National average was 5%. Dallas went up by 9%. The number of people we have that are homeless in Austin today is less than the number of people that we had 8 years ago. Cities like Seattle, with 200,000 fewer people than we have 6 times as many people experiencing homelessness. Los Angeles spent $200 million last year housing 20,000 people experiencing homelessness, and their homeless count went up by 16%. They have 40,000 people experiencing homelessness in Los Angeles, 60,000 in Los Angeles County. Just want to put in perspective, this is a really serious challenge here, but we're not dealing with the scale that many cities are. We in this city have a chance to avoid that scale. We have a chance to end homelessness in our city. But I asked them, what do you wish your city had done 6 to 8 years ago, 10 years ago, in order to be able to avoid? With 20/20 hindsight, what do you wish you had done? And both cities told me the same thing. They said that, I wish we had gotten serious about housing people earlier in the process. We spent too much time moving people around instead of actually solving the problem. They said, you in Austin can probably get away with it for another 2-4 years, right? Because you can have people threatened with arrest or ticketing, they'll get up and move. The problem is that when you go to her and you tell her, you have to move, ma'am, or I'm going to arrest you or ticket you. 98% of the time they move. And as she is gathering up her stuff, saying, please don't arrest me, please don't ticket me, I'm going to comply. And as she is gathering up her stuff, she looks up and she says, where do you want me to go? Where do you want me to go? Because I want to comply. And our answer to her is, I don't know, ma'am, you just can't be here. So she gets up and she moves. And wherever she moves in this city, she's subject to, again, someone coming to her and saying, ma'am, you need to move. The people in LA and Seattle say that they did that for too long. They said, you're going to be able to get away with it for another, as I said, 2, 4, 6 years. Of course, what's going to happen during that time is your law enforcement is going to come to you and ask for more money for more officers because they're having to do it more often with more people. And they said, and you're going to give it. You're going to do that. You're going to give that additional funding that way because politically you're going to do that because you don't have any other answers for that. And if your law enforcement is asking for more resources to do that, why wouldn't you give it to them? So you're going to do it. And 4 years later, your police officers are going to be coming to you again. And they're going to say it worked. 98% of the time, we were able to move people from where they were. But we need more money because we need more officers because we don't have enough people to do this. And at that point, your city's going to look up and say, this is a failed strategy. It does not work. And then for the first time, you're going to get serious about housing people. But at that point, your challenge is going to be so big, the scale so large, that it's going to be hard for you to put your arms around it. We have a chance in this city to do better. At that point, Eric Garcetti looked at me and he said, now tell me again, how many people do you have on a given night homeless in your city? And I said, 2,255. And he laughed at me. He said, I have the answer for Austin. Put them in houses. Find them a place to live. Give them the services they need. I wish we were dealing with the scale that you are. So what happens in the next 90 days? I hope this community gets serious about actually solving the challenge. I hope this community does not satisfy itself with just moving people around. Because if we work together, we can do this.
Excuse me, please. Excuse me. Civility, please, too, on top of this, ma'am. Civility, please, one at a time. We'll get to questions, but I ask you to please.
That you are more interested in taking developer money than by pushing against their destruction. You claim to want to help the homeless, but your actions prove otherwise. Adler, you have taken over
Thank you, ma'am. We have civility, please. This is a community issue, and I ask you to please let the mayor finish, and then we'll turn to you. Thank you. Thanks very much. Mayor, let me ask you to continue, and then we'll turn to the other members of the council.
Okay, and I'll try
Thanks
to
very
wrap
much.
this up quickly. You know, I love this city. You know, in Austin, there is more community involvement and community engagement than any other city that I'm aware of in the country. And it is not unusual for me to hear from people that think I'm doing too much and people who think I'm doing too little. Kind of part of the parcel of the conversations that we have in the city. My hope is that as a community we are serious about actually doing what we need to solve the challenge. And I will point out to you that we know what works. We were able to get to effective zero for veteran homelessness in our city because we pulled together and we came up with innovative solutions like the Risk Fund for landlords. We had organizations like the Austin Apartment Association and the Real Estate Council, the business community, the service providers that all got together, one of the few cities in the country to achieve that. We housed over 650 veterans in our community en route to getting there. Your city took half of the homeless children that were on our streets off the streets last year, with the goal being to get to the other half this year. We have organizations like Caritas that has a 98% effectiveness rate when they can actually put someone in a home and give them the support services, and they sustain themselves and stabilize their lives. We know what works. We have programs like Community First that's housing people and needs support to expand. We know what works. The question is, are we going to be serious and actually solve the challenge at a time when we can? I laid out, together with council members, all of us up here on the dais worked on it, a plan to be able, concepts that we need to consider to be able to move forward, which I think begin with the premise that, one, we don't want anyone camping anywhere in this city, and we have to be guided at trying to deliver that. And the reason that no one's going to be camping anywhere in this city is because we have better, safer places for them to go. And there's a relationship between those two things. Now, there are some people in this room that are probably only concerned about places. And there are probably some people in this room that are only concerned about people. Most of us are concerned about both. But frankly, it doesn't make any difference where you are on that scale. Because the answer, wherever you are, is to provide more housing in our city. Now, there are better and safer places for people to be, and I think it's important for us to start designating the places that people should not be while they're camping, sitting, or lying. And we have other places. We've done that in the city to ensure ADA compliance. We don't even let bicycles on the sidewalk in some parts of our city for safety reasons. And we should be applying those kind of safety and health standards in our city for camping, sitting, and lying. But understand that if you ask someone to move, you have to be able to answer the question, where do you want me to move to? And if your best answer to that question is 2 blocks from where you are right now, find another place on the street. If that's your best answer, then you are failing the community and you are failing ourselves. I have never been so encouraged as I am today that the community is engaged and we can solve this the way that we're supposed to, in a way that is actually effective. Because for 5 years, while I've been in this office, and for years before I was in this office, we have raised the issue of camps and people sitting and lying, and we have failed to do what it takes. Now is the time.
Thanks so much, Mayor. And thank you for the summary. And there is a more robust plan that we've distributed to all the members of the audience, so details are there. Councilmember Kazar, your thoughts on what we ought to do for the next 90 days?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Mayor, and good morning. Thank you. Thank you all so much for having us for this really important conversation. I want to start out talking about the next 90 days by reading a quote from a lieutenant from the Austin Police Department. And the lieutenant said, reading this from an article, "What were the City Council's expectations after the homelessness ordinances were passed? We don't have the staff at the police department to round them up or the room to put them away. Maybe we should have thought this through a little more. The city said, we'll talk our game, we've done our job by passing the homeless camping ordinances, and now we're not going to have homelessness anymore. But the problem is it's not going to work in the long run. Violators will go to court one day and just come out the next." That article is from 1996, when the camping ordinances were passed. We have not done the right thing on this issue dating to 1996 or beforehand, when they were talking about what to do with the 6,000 people on the street in 1996. At that time, I was 7 years old. What we do in the next 90 days is we finally do the right thing. We finally try to address the problem. Because what I feel on this council and from our community is that people want to see us do the right thing. They want to see us not keep putting off doing the right thing. I think people in this community believe fundamentally, no matter where you come from on this issue, that every person deserves a home, every person deserves to feel safe in their community, every person deserves to feel proud of their city government and what we're doing, every person deserves to have their basic civil rights protected. And I think that that is exactly where this community is. So what we do in the next 90 days is that we come together to finally do the right thing in ways that we have not been able to for so long. And I believe that the people on the dais who work so many hours, who one of the #1 complaints is how hard we work from 9 in the morning till 4:30 in the morning, sometimes inside City Hall, is that we're ready to take this on, but we need to do it together with the community. And that means that we can both house people and not violate people's basic civil rights in the process. And I think that that's what everybody wants to see us do. Because just between 2014 and 2016, we handed out 18,000 tickets, the vast majority of which turned into arrest warrants, and we did not solve the problem. We had great organizations doing amazing work housing people, but never to the scale that our action plan to end homelessness demands. And so I think in the next 90 days, we commit ourselves to fully doing the right thing, that we can house everyone who does not have a home in Austin, that we can come together and do that without resorting to the things we've tried in the past that haven't worked, and that we can come together and do it even if we come from different political persuasions, political backgrounds, whatever our philosophy coming into it is. I think that we all really want to fix it. My own experience as a district council member has taught me so much about this issue. In my first year representing a part of North Austin, I have a little rectangle I represent that stretches north to south, up and down I-35. And I remember within my first year on council, we had so many calls in to the police department on a homeless encampment in the northern part of my district. And the wonderful social workers that had been working to house some of the people They knew exactly who lived there. And because there had been so many tickets and so many calls, eventually the homeless encampment started to subside and some of those tents started to go away. And then I started getting the same phone calls from the neighborhood just 1 mile south of there in my district as they got moved around. And then that place where folks had been camping got turned into a car dealership and developed. And then folks on the other side of 35 in my district said, now there are all these homeless folks who weren't here before, but they just used to be living right on the other side of the highway. We can't keep spending money trying to avoid the problem, because that's what we've been doing since 1996. We have also been investing in great programs that have worked, but never to the scale and never with the level of commitment to really fix the problem. So whether you agree with me or disagree with me, that is one thing. But another is, I think we all agree that we have to come together and fix the real problem. And I think that that's what we're committed to doing together in the next 90 days.
Thanks so much. Councilmember Tobo.
Thanks very much. I want to just start by appreciating all of you who have taken time out of your day to come participate in this really critical community conversation. I know it's during the day, many of you would otherwise be at work, and so thank you for your participation, and I want to invite you to, if you're not already engaged and involved in working to end homelessness, I'd like to invite you to become a part of that, because it is going to be critical that each and every one of us in this room join the effort to end homelessness. That is really what it's going to take. I represent City Council District 9. It includes most of downtown. It also includes West Campus. It's the district with the highest percentage of individuals who are experiencing homelessness, about 40%, and the highest number of unsheltered individuals. And having been a participant in the point-in-time count that takes place every January, I can tell you in the conversations I've had as part of that process that the individuals who are sleeping in the alleyways, in the fronts of businesses throughout our downtown have many and diverse stories. One year, I had an opportunity to interview those of you who have participated know how that process works. You have a list of questions that you're asking those individuals, and then that information gets accumulated and sent up to the federal agency that then determines how much grant funding should come back to Austin. So it's critically important, and 600 or so volunteers participate in this every year. And a couple years ago in those conversations, I interviewed a young person who had been kicked out of his house. He was under 18, suffering, as he described it, from medical issues as well as mental health issues. And these are the individuals who are experiencing homelessness in our downtown area and in other areas of our city. One of the gentlemen we interviewed said he had about 5 minutes to talk. We had to wake him up, and he said, I can talk to you, but just for a couple of minutes, because I have a job I need to get to, working construction on a site in just a couple hours. It is critically important that we join together in the effort to end homelessness, and that begins with housing. As the mayor and my colleague, Councilmember Kassar, said, this is something that is a high priority for our council. I'm really proud to serve on a council that has made it our top priority, and I can tell you, and most of my staff from the District 9 office are here today, it has been the highest priority for my district office for the years that we've been in office. We have a tremendous amount to do, but I want to say that we are also making good progress as a community and as a city. We simply need more resources, and we need the private participation. We have some very important initiatives that have been launched, and we'll have an opportunity probably to talk about some of those here today, but we have other initiatives that are underway. And so let me pivot now to the 90-day, what we need to accomplish in the next 90 days. I will say some of it looks a lot like what we've been working toward the last couple years. The mayor talked about how, as a community, we have effectively ended veteran homelessness, and how we are well on our way to ending youth homelessness for people like the young man I described a few minutes ago. In June alone, in our community, 106 people were able, with the partnerships from the city, our social service, and our housing providers, 106 individuals were able to exit homelessness into permanent housing. I hear a couple of people clapping. We should clap. It takes a lot of work. From January to June of this year, 875 people exited homelessness into permanent housing. We have tremendous partnerships going on in this community, and we need to support and sustain them. The City of Austin has our budget. In our next 90 days, we will be passing that city budget. As you've probably heard from the news, we are sustaining our ongoing commitment to programs that both prevent homelessness as well as work to provide housing and services for individuals who are experiencing homelessness. But we are also increasing that investment to historic levels. This is critical. We are going to be considering that in the next month. We have initiated, as many of you know, a redesign at the Arch to make that a housing-focused shelter so that every individual who is staying at the Arch will have case management, they will have the services they need to find housing. They will not have to leave during the day, so they can spend that time during the day finding work or going to their jobs, and then having the support they need to identify housing so that they can exit the shelter and move to permanent housing. And those changes are underway. They will be rolling out over the next couple months, but by this fall, the bulk of those changes will have happened. We have also, just at our last council meeting, made a commitment to the Salvation Army Rathgaber Family Center. And this personally is something I'm going to continue to advocate for, including in the next 90 days. We have a brand new family center out along Tannehill Drive that was with the generosity of the Rathgaber family and many private donors. They have built a new family center with available shelter beds in a facility that is supportive, that will provide the services people need to exit shelter into housing. They have not yet raised the money to maintain and operate that facility. So at this point, they will not be able to open it up and make it available at 100%. As a community, and all of you are here to discuss this subject of homelessness, that to me is a high, high priority. To make sure that the Salvation Army's Rathgaber Family Center can open and operate at 100% capacity. That will also allow them to reconfigure their beds downtown at our downtown shelter so that those can be used for individuals. So we win on both of those fronts. We're getting more people into housing, whether they're families and children who are currently downtown, a block from the Arch, get them into a family center where they are on the path to permanent housing, and then we can use those available shelter beds. So those are a couple of the priorities that we have both as a council and that I have personally over the next 90 days, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about others, but I think that is a couple places to start.
Thanks so much, Councilmember Tovo. And now, Councilmember Kitchen, and then we'll get into a series of questions from the audience.
Thank you. I want to thank my colleagues, the mayor, for their comments. I agree with all those comments. I want to thank all of you that are here today, and I want to particularly thank the people that my staff and I have been working with over the last 2 years in South Austin. We have a constructive community in District 5 in South Austin, which for those of you who are not as familiar, which is Central South Austin. The folks in my district have had significant issues to deal with, whether you live near the area under Ben White, whether you live near the area around Slaughter that the mayor mentioned, and I want to thank the mayor for his participation with the neighbors in these areas. So you all know, well, first off, I want to reiterate, there is a significant large group of neighbors in these areas that are working constructively to find solutions. And I want to thank you for working with us in moving forward. And let me just say that you all know what the mayor said earlier, that the many, many things that we have tried, all the way from working to cleanups, to working on directed patrols around Joslyn Park, to other kinds of actions that we have taken, have all just been, they don't last. And they are not the solutions that get us permanent answers to our concerns. I also want to say that what I have learned from working with folks in the community and from what I've learned about the issue also is that as a community, we don't want camping in public places. It's not good for anyone. It's not good for neighbors, and it's not good for the folks that are forced, that have no alternatives but to live on the streets. We all want to help our neighbors. We want to treat them well. We want to find solutions. But at the same time, we understand that we need solutions for our neighborhoods. So the bottom line is, as we've been saying up here, that providing housing is really the only real way that we can address homelessness as a community. That includes housing for those who are homeless now. That includes a whole set of activities to help prevent homelessness. So we know that we've got to work on that, and I am heartened by the fact that all of you are here. I know that our community can do better. I know that our community wants us to come forward with constructive action quickly. So let me just say a couple of things that we're working on. I won't repeat all the many things, and I want to thank all of our service providers that are here, our public safety workers, our EMS, our police, everyone that works with people experiencing homelessness every day. Thank you so much. That's a hard thing to do, and I want to thank you for doing that. I also want to speak to the shelter in South Austin. The Housing Focus Center that the council unanimously passed on June 20th is something that we've been working towards for the last year. It is an important, critical piece of what needs to happen for our community. It is only one piece. We listened to folks that raised the concerns in South Austin, and they have valid, legitimate concerns. This has to be operated as a good neighbor. So as a community, as a council, we listened and we passed direction, and we said, and we're going to vote on it again in September, that operations would include no drop-ins. These would be services for people that live there. This is their home. We would not provide services to people that don't live there, and importantly for this community, we would not allow camping around this area. That will come back to us in September as a part of public process. Everyone will have a chance to see that legally enforceable restrictive covenant. So now let me turn for a moment about the question at hand is, what do we do in the next 90 days? What should we do? We know we have to move very quickly. We've done a lot of things. Our service community has done a lot of things. Our neighborhoods are asking for a lot of things. We have to fund and ramp up the services that you offer now. We'll be doing that as part of the budget when we adopt the budget on September 10th, I think. We need to come forward with a very specific action plan. We have, an implementation plan. We have an action plan that we adopted last year. We need to turn that into specific work plans with dates, priorities, timelines, who's responsible, and how we're going to pay for it. And it needs to answer the question of, we're going to house X number of people in X number of days, and this is how we're going to do it. So we need to do that. We also have got to address what happens in the meantime. We have to address what happens now with the problems that we experience in our community when people camp on the streets and in green belts with no bathrooms, no showers, no laundry, no way to clean their area. We have to address that tomorrow and the next day and the next day. At the same time, we are working as quickly as we can to help people get into housing. So I want to thank my colleagues for putting forward this document that was sent to each one of you, and it's been posted publicly. It speaks to immediate action to address homelessness in Austin. I'm not going to go through all of it, but I do want to point out that one of the things that we recognize as important is that we need to address and immediately start creating a list of public spaces where camping, sitting, and lying should not be allowed immediately. And those are places that are not good for anyone to be in. These are places that are not safe, they're not humane, they're not the best places for people to be. They may pose public safety risk or public health hazards. We owe that to the folks that are homeless, who are experiencing homelessness, and to our community. And so these include things like places adjacent to roadways or medians, adjacent to transit, shelters, adjacent to shelters or homes, schools, those kinds of things. So I'm going to wrap up. And I just want to, I'm very encouraged, and I invite all of you to stand with us as we talk about solutions. We have to work towards the future, about what we can do that will work. This is a community problem. We have to do it together. And I know we can. We're the community that we can do this. And I look forward to working with all of you and with my colleagues.
Okay, thanks so much. Thank you. And what I want to do, I know that there are a lot of questions out there, and we have much less time than we need to be able to get to all of them. But let me try to bundle some of the questions together, and then we'll ask the members of our panel to respond if we can. And I have a question here. Why don't we start here? Just a question. And again, keep your questions short, questions, not speeches. I'll bundle a couple of them, and then we'll ask the panel to respond.
Hi, Craig Staley from Royal Blue Grocery on Congress Avenue. How are we going to address the mental health crisis and the drug addiction that's going on in our streets? Right now, there is a high concentration of folks living on 6th and living on Congress. One in front of our store has been there for weeks. He doesn't want home. He doesn't want shelter. He won't go. He's not going to do that. So we need a balanced approach, but we also need to be thinking about our city streets, the ones that people are coming here to visit. UT football kicks off in 10 days, and they're going to see a different Austin than they've seen before when they come here.
Sounds good. So first question is on mental health. Let me get this question here. Yes, ma'am? We'll be back to you in a moment.
I would like to know when is the new shelter in District 5 going to open? And I'd like to know a timeline and budget for housing over 2,000 people. In closing the resource center part of Front Step, where would the people go for resources?
Okay, thanks. So timeline on the budget in South Austin. Have a second question on mental health. A question here. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, Kimberly Levinson, Downtown Austin Neighborhood Association, and one of the things that we wanted to speak to was how do we deal precisely with the issue that Mr. Staley is talking about, and could we consider some sort of carve out for the DAA PID or something, and then how would we redirect those people?
Okay, 3 different questions. Panelists, let me ask you if you want to respond to those, and let me, Congressmember Kitchen, if I could ask you to start, and then we'll work our way down.
Oh, I don't know if I should thank you for the promotion there, but anyway, so.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Which question did you want me to?
Sit there. There's one on South Austin.
Sure.
And the shelter there. There's a question of mental health, and there's a question, too, on top of that having to do with the possibility of a carve-out.
Okay, I think the specific question had to do with when is that center scheduled to open. There's a number of steps that the council will continue discussing and voting on and working with our neighbors on. We hope to have that up and running in the first part of the next year. So we will be continuing to work with the community to put those legally enforceable restrictions in place. We will be working with our staff and the community on the selection of a service provider and the details around referrals and the scope of services that will happen there. So.
Okay. Councilmember Tovo.
Sure, I'll try to hit all of those questions very quickly. With regard to the arch, the question that was posed by Arit of the Trinity Center about the day resources that are currently offered at the arch. As I mentioned, we have initiated a redesign of the Arch to make it housing focused. It does require a relocation of the services that are currently provided to individuals who may not be guests of the Arch, but might come in to do laundry or seek other support and other resources. My office has been in constant contact with public health about their work in that regard. It's my understanding that none of those day resources will be phased out until they've identified partners who can provide that elsewhere in the community. And so there are, as I'm told, two community partners who I believe are going to provide some of those services. It is really important. Many of you who are providers or social service providers worked together on a pilot from a couple of years ago that my office and others were involved in down at the Arch. It's really what we learned. One of the learnings from that pilot is that some individuals are coming downtown because they're seeking services that aren't offered elsewhere in the community. And so our staff are looking at libraries, recreation centers, neighborhood centers, community partners elsewhere in the city to provide some of those very critical services for individuals who are experiencing homelessness, including providing the coordinated assessment that gets them in the queue for housing elsewhere in the city, so individuals don't have to come downtown to seek those services. So I think we have a good plan in place for relocating and providing expanded services geographically dispersed to replace those that are going away at the Arch. This year, we are the budget that is currently before council that we'll vote on here in the next several weeks includes $1.6 million for mental health and substance use disorder treatment. So we are aware of the critical importance of that. We have partnerships with Integral Care. One really important innovative strategy that Austin initiated a couple of years ago is the Homelessness Outreach Street Team, which is an interdisciplinary team that includes an APD officer, it includes Integral Care caseworkers, it includes EMS, and this team is active in the downtown area as well as West Campus, interacting with individuals who are experiencing homelessness, connecting them with mental health resources, medical resources, and again, connecting them with housing resources. And so that is, I appreciate you raising that important issue. And then lastly, and then I'll yield, was the more general question about housing and how much it's going to cost. Councilmember Kitchen talked about the action plan to end homelessness, which the Ending Community Homelessness Coalition coordinated with lots of input from other social service providers. Our council endorsed it about a year ago. This is estimated that we need a variety of housing. I talked earlier about the variety of individuals who are experiencing homelessness, from families and children to individuals who may be chronically homeless. We need different approaches and different strategies for different individuals, for some of the different experiences or challenges they may be facing. The Ending Community Homelessness Action Plan that we endorsed describes the spectrum of housing and services that are needed, and estimated that we're going to need about an annual increased commitment of about $55 million. And so, we are not going to be able to provide that level of funding as a city. This has got to be a public-private partnership. We need those innovative public-private partnerships like the Pay for Success Initiative and other similar partnerships. So as I said in my introductory comments, each and every one of us has a role to play. And if you're able to engage in this, I really encourage you to do so, because
Thanks so much. Councilmember Kizar.
It will require the participation of each and every one of us.
Sounds good. Thanks.
We're going to have the mayor speak to some of the points, and I'll just focus on mental health and substance use disorder, because that is such a serious issue in all of our community and all of our lives. I would venture to say that I bet probably every person in this room knows someone, loves someone, has friends or family struggling with mental health issues, or have struggled with mental health or substance use. And we are in a state that shamefully dedicates so few resources, near the very bottom of the list, on this issue. And the city needs to step up and participate in that alongside everyone else. And while we can and still do have bans and prohibitions on threatening behavior or violent behavior, someone simply having a mental health issue or substance use issue, whether they are housed or not housed, doesn't get solved in the jail, and it can get made worse in the jail, but the primary care provider for mental health issues in this community and across the state is the jail. And that, it does not work. It makes things worse. And winding up without housing and on the street only makes those issues worse, or people can pick up those issues from what happens living on the street. And so housing folks and getting people a safe place to be is the first place where we can stabilize folks and provide them with the other supports and services that it is that they need. And that's how we have found that people get into housing and stay there. Caritas, as the mayor said, over 97% success rate once they have housed a person and brought them those services. I would talk to some folks experiencing homelessness in my district when neighbors had concerns, and we went and walked and spoke with people. And a person said that he had refused services and housing multiple times. But then, under part of the initiative the mayor spoke about ending veterans homelessness, he saw one of his buddies get housed, and then somebody else get housed. And then he said, man, maybe this will actually work, because we have failed some folks so many times that why would they believe in a system that has failed them in the past? And I believe, from talking to so many of the folks that do this work every day, that if we provide that whole pipeline, that you can go to the shelter, but you're only going to be there for a short while because we've got a place for you at the end of the tunnel, and we've got services to help you stay there, and we can help you find that job, that it will work. And otherwise, we will continue to spend those dollars on the jails and the emergency rooms and pay the cost in our hearts as well.
Thanks much. Mayor, and then we'll get to some more questions.
I appreciate the answers that my colleagues have given, and I agree with all of those answers. This is expensive. You need to know that the 250 people that are the most chronically engaged, experiencing homelessness in our city, the folks that are showing up in our jails the most frequency, taking the most rides in our EMS vehicles, the people who are showing up in the emergency rooms, the people who are most chronically are costing our community $220,000 a year each. That's not the city, that's everybody all together. $220,000 a year each, just those 250 people. There's a better investment that we could make in order to be able to do something. We do need the help of the state. We need the governor's help. I would point out that the state of California just gave to the cities in California $650 million to focus on homelessness and the issues of mental health and the like, but focused on homelessness, the city of LA got $145 million from the state just a month or so ago. We need, if not that much, we need some help from the state. We have a strategy officer coming into the city of Austin, starts September 9th. Lori Pompilo Harris comes to us from Miami, comes from Orlando. She's done some great work there. She's reduced homelessness in that city. She actually consults cities around the country, so we're going to have that ability as well. With respect to the downtown PID, I get asked the question a lot. Can't you just end homelessness where I live? Is there anybody here that doesn't live downtown? Would you raise your hand if you don't live downtown? So the question I would ask is, I don't want to have any camping in the downtown PID. I really don't. But if we stop it in downtown PID tomorrow, whose neighborhood do you want to send it to? Because it's not like the people disappear. They don't just go away unless we get them in a home. Now, I think there are some areas downtown that we should say people shouldn't be camping, sitting in line, because we have health and safety rules, as I talked about earlier, for bicycles on sidewalks. We should apply those rules. But we're not going to solve this as a community by sending the problem to somebody else's neighborhood. We are all in this together. There are almost 1,000 people in this room, almost 1,000. We have just over 1,000 people that are living unsheltered in our streets. If everybody in this room took over partial sponsorship to help with a rent rebate, rental assistance, if people in this room could help find landlords that are willing to open up an apartment in their building join with the Apartment Association and RECA in trying to find those places. This is us. And together we can do this. There's going to be a town hall meeting next week, another 1,000 people. So really, you guys only have to do half the work. And I can tell you, I have been to enough and will be to many more neighborhood association meetings. You don't even have to do half or a third or a tenth. This is a community that's engaged, but this is the work we need to do with each other.
Thanks so much, Mayor. We have lots of questions. Keep them short if you will, to get as many of them as we can. I'll bundle them up. Yes, sir?
So this is from a KUT article regarding the Ben White Center. It says $8.6 million for 100 beds. So that's 86 grand per bed. And if I'm hearing you guys correctly, everybody's solution up there is pretty much unanimously to spend more money to build more housing. My question is, you know, right, I heard the figure of 2,000, whatever it was, 300. What is your solution to prevent more people from coming into the city? You know, you build 100 beds, how are you going to stave off more?
Two questions. Let me do that. Quick question.
It's Kassar, not Kezar, but Councilmember Kitchen especially. How can we trust you when you say you're going to give staff directions, say about the Ben White shelter, when we just saw in the memo from the Housing Strategy Office and City Manager where you gave them a bunch of direction, including finding places that were acceptable for camping and sleeping, and they replied that they respectfully decline to comply with your direction. So we can't trust that.
Thanks much. Let me get a couple more questions here. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Dave Connor. I'm a downtown resident, and I would ask the council if you guys would consider reversing the camping ordinance. From my perspective, and anecdotally from a lot of my neighbors, things have gotten really bad in the downtown area. And if I could also respectively ask you guys to limit your response to a minute or so we can get a lot of questions in.
Let me get one more question here. Yes, sir. Come on over here. Yes, sir.
Just tying all the earlier questions, like I regularly travel to West Coast cities, LA, San Francisco. It seems like a lot of the policies and the way you're going about it is the same way that they tried to go about it 10 years ago, and it didn't work. Instead, they have increasing homelessness, increasing people moving from across the country to go to cities where they know they get free services, free housing, they can live on the streets. The cops have their hands tied. They're not allowed to arrest them. I step over homeless people walking across the downtown in San Francisco, and I don't want that to happen in Austin, but it looks like we're literally on the exact same path. So I'd like you to address that and how you're going to prevent us from being a magnet.
So there's a whole bundle of questions here, all having to do in part with how we try to fund the amount of housing that we're talking about we need, and the concern that doing so may create a kind of a magnet to create more problems. If you, again, to what degree you can keep your answers short, we get more questions in because we have lots of hands up. Thanks so much. Let me start with Councilmember Kezar for start.
The harsh and real truth is that folks who are experiencing homelessness have a lifespan 30 years shorter than folks that are housed. It does matter. And the reason it matters to me is that we cannot think that folks, that us policing and prosecuting folks just for the mere fact of being homeless is what is going to stop or end homelessness. We've tried that for 20 years. Folks don't want to live on the street. Folks don't want to, I mean, what more disincentive could one ask for than the fact that you're likely to die 30 years earlier, have 30 years of your life taken away? So we already have tried. I respectfully am really trying to, which is, would we want to try again what it was that we tried from 1996 until the end of June of this year? And the answer is that hasn't worked. When in talking to and going and speaking with service providers and social workers, the vast majority of folks that we speak to are from here or they are from here recently enough, just like so many of us who came 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, and lost a job, had a serious medical issue, got divorced, were fleeing domestic violence, a whole breadth of reasons. And then if they stay on the street, their life expectancy is 30 years shorter than mine. And that just isn't right. And we haven't been able to solve that problem by policing it away. We have restrictions. We still have restrictions on where it is one can and cannot camp. You can't camp in parks, can't camp where there's a health or safety problem, can't camp where you're blocking reasonable use of public space. You can't camp at any city facility with a curfew that includes our libraries, our recreation centers. You can't camp on private property. We still have some level of restriction, but there has to be somewhere where folks can be, because otherwise we are simply continuing what it is we have done. And then to end that camping, we have to pull folks off the street.
Let me quickly answer the
Mayor?
two questions. Let me quickly answer the two questions that were asked as well, building on the answer. How do you keep people from coming to the city? If we house people, if we do a better job here, then everyone's going to come here. Be really careful where you get your facts and your information from, because because I'm reading the same thing that you're all reading on social media too. So the suggestion that people move to the best cities, that people experiencing homelessness have a voter's guide to cities, and we're going to go from 2 stars to 3 stars or 4 stars, is an urban myth. There's an article in today's Statesman, it's a fact check, of Governor Gavin in California, used to be mayor of San Francisco, and he remarked, the reason we have the homeless challenge we have is because people are coming to us from Texas. Read the article, and it points out that in San Francisco, as in Austin, as Councilmember Kassar said, are not people that migrate. They are people that lived in the city when they became home. Most of the people in our city that are homeless are transitionally homeless. They suffered the perfect storm. They lost their job, their spouse, their children, their job, their place where they live, all at the same time. We know that if we can get those folks into a home pretty quickly, we can get them into a home quickly, in 3 months or 6 months, maybe 9 months, their lives are stabilized and they're back into society. If we can get them into a home quickly. Do you know how long in Austin right now it takes if you show up in that situation and you say, put me on the list so I can find a home? 3 years. 3 years is the average time on that list. So that's an urban myth. And then the second one, the urban myth that I'd like to be able to address, is that what we're doing now in saying, let's actually focus on housing people, is the path that Seattle took and Los Angeles took. Quite the opposite is true. In both Seattle and California, they adopted policies of moving people around, strictly enforcing no camping, no sitting, and no lying provisions. And they moved people around, and they kept moving them around until the scale of the problem grew so big. The practices in Los Angeles that said that you can't do that anymore are recent court decisions that now they are reacting to. And when you talk to the people that live there, they say, I wish we had not been focused on these moving people around issue from the downtown PID to the neighborhoods. We could close down tomorrow the people sleeping under Slaughter Lane overpass at I-35, and then they're going to show up at Ben White and Pack Saddle. We could close that down tomorrow, and they're going to show back up at Slaughter Lane or at a different overpass. We have to stop doing this. It is an urban myth that we are on the path that Los Angeles, by changing, we were on the path that Los Angeles and Seattle were on by moving people around and not focusing on housing. If you want us to end up in a different place than Los Angeles and Seattle, then let's collectively as a community get together and house these people that are experiencing homelessness.
Councilmember Kitchen?
I need to very quickly, very quickly address one piece of misinformation. I think it's important that we address those, as the mayor said. We passed out to everyone a fact sheet about the housing shelter. I encourage everyone to look at. And just to explain, when we talk about a maximum of 100 beds, The information explains that a housing center is a place that people go through, not to. They're not staying there. So we're not serving 100 people a year there. We're serving anywhere from 400 to 1,200 people there because they don't stay. They go to the center, they get the services they need to move on to permanent housing. So I encourage everyone to take a look at what was sent to you, which is a fact sheet about the housing center.
And I'd like to add 2 lightning quick comments. The first is we've referred a few times to the proposal that the mayor, Councilmember Kitchen, and I, along with input from Councilmember Kassar, have laid out, and that is your opportunity to comment. Are there areas that, from a public health and safety issue, you would suggest we take a look at in this next 30 days for a revision? But
Sounds
just
good.
to underscore the point that the mayor made, if you look at the point-in-time count numbers that I referred to earlier, one of the questions on that questionnaire is, where did you first experience homelessness? And the evidence, the data from that process that our community participates in each year shows that it is just an urban myth that people are coming to Austin as individuals who are experiencing homelessness. The individuals experiencing homelessness in our community are our neighbors. They are people who have lived here, sometimes for years, and have become homeless for the most part here in Travis County. And I would say they are our neighbors, and that is just a critical approach that we have to take. They are our neighbors. We need to work together as a community to end homelessness with housing as we continue these other conversations.
Thanks much. If we have short questions, we have time for one more round. Let me start here.
Hello, my name is David Johnson, and I'm with Grassroots Leadership. And my question is about I'd like the panel to discuss the city's dedication to addressing root causes of mass homelessness, such as mass incarceration and the mass gentrification and regentrification of traditional communities of color within the city that have caused those afflicted by homelessness to, as Councilperson Tovo said, need resources outside of the downtown area. So as gentrification has pushed people out and incarceration has caused people to have records that leave them unavailable for housing, what is the city's strategy to address those issues?
First question is on root causes. Sir, you have a...
Yes. Seems like we're taking a Pollyanna approach to this because there's some of these people that are mentally ill, that are drug addicted, that need to be off the streets now. And, you know, housing them, I'd love to be able to say, hey, we're going to give everybody a house and, you know, it's going to be, but realistically, we need to let the police do their jobs. If I've got a man eating out of a garbage can in front of my gym every day, he's bleeding because he has track marks from where he needs immediate help. And sometimes the only way to get these people immediate help is to enforce the laws that are on the books. And I really think that if we would do that, we can get those people immediate help, and then we can get the housing situation for the people that really need housing and don't need mental health, that aren't in mental health, have mental health issues, drug addicted. Those people need immediate help, and we need to get them off the streets now.
Thanks much. Let me get one or two more quick questions in here, if we can.
Just a quick question. Where is these houses going in Austin? Just south, north, east, west?
A question about where, and yes, ma'am.
Hello. Would it be possible, I've noticed since the ordinances were repealed, there's a lot of dangerous rhetoric directed towards our homeless neighbors as if they were a threat to public health and safety. But as Councilman Kassar made clear, we're actually a threat to the health and safety of our homeless neighbors. They are literally dying on the street. And I think and I think there's a lot of ignorance about who our homeless neighbors really are, why they're homeless, who they are. There are some wonderful, kind, intelligent, brave people on the street, and each of them has a story that would bring you to your knees. And because people don't know them as human beings and neighbors, it's easy to say, oh, just get them, just arrest them, just have the police strike them off. Would it be possible to fund something similar to Mark Horvath's Invisible People to educate people about who their homeless neighbors really are? Thank you.
Thanks. And just one more question, just this gentleman over here, if I can. You just come on over here to the side. We'll get the last question for this round. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Listen, I've been here since the 60s, and I reject most of what you're saying. I agree that I'd like to help everyone. If I could give everyone a house tomorrow, I'd do it. I can do it. We got finite resources. These people that get distressed have neighbors. If they're good people, the neighbors can help them. I don't see the neighbors taking them on. It's called adoption or whatever you want to name it. We can accommodate. Our biggest problem here, and this is not my original statement, if you build it, they will come. I believe in facts, not truth. Let me tell you, your problem here is going to get worse. The best thing you got going for you right now is the climate. The climate's terrible. That's why they go to California, Washington, some of these other places you can live on the street. But that's not the issue. The issue is we need to consolidate. And I've got a plan. I'd love to talk to you all about where we could consolidate these people and then deal with other towns that need people that might be willing to take some of them on.
Okay.
I'd be willing to pay for some of these buses to go.
Okay, sounds good. Let me ask who wants to jump in first to that round of questions.
You want me to go? Someone else want to go? Let me see if I can hit these really fast. It's really important to hit the root causes. We can't deal with this just symptomatically, and there are a lot of root causes for people going into and experiencing homelessness. The chief correlator is evictions. So I think that if we were able to deal with evictions in our city, provide assistance at that level, we could stop a lot of people that are coming into the homeless community. And I think that's something that we need to do, because once they get there, if we can't house them quickly and they spend more and more time on the street, then they start getting associated issues, and it's harder to be able to get to a stabilized place. We're not talking about building a house for everybody who's homeless in this city. Please, I know we're going to see that on social media now too. Not everybody who's homeless gets a gift home. That's not what we need to do. It's not the most constructive thing to do. But what we should be doing is taking a look at maybe some of the motel or hotel buildings in our city that we can buy and then convert to this use. What we're talking about are getting landlords that own apartment buildings that are willing to devote some of the units to that use. Again, please don't, I don't want to see the social media that says I'm asking everybody in the city to invite someone into the guest room in their home. I'm not suggesting that either. But we do need to house people, and there are ways for us to be able to do that. And we're not talking about just homes, we're talking about homes with services, so that we can actually help someone stabilize their life and they can get back into society. I would point out we have different perspectives, and I think that's really important on the same challenge. People come to it from different places. I urge everybody in this room to spend just a moment thinking what it means to walk in somebody else's shoes, because there are valid and different perspectives for what's happening in the city on all sides of this issue. And then I conclude again with, please, as best you can, rely on actual facts and actual data, because if we rely on actual facts and data, we have a much better chance of actually finding solutions that will work.
I would like to speak quickly to the question that was raised about mental health issues. I would like to say just two quick things. First, just to please understand that we did not repeal the laws related to homelessness. What we did is focus on behaviors, and we kept in place the laws that we have in our community that relate to certain kinds of behaviors that as a community. But the fundamental root of what you're asking about is, how do we serve folks that are that have mental illness? This is a health issue. It is a critical health issue. We need to, the housing that we're, two things. The housing that we're talking about, as the mayor said, includes housing for people with substance use issues and with mental health issues. We can thank Integral Care, our community-wide service provider that does much more than that and works with people with mental illness. We need to work with those experts. What else can we do to address and help people with mental illness in our city?
That's good. Councilmember Tova?
I have a story, and I'm going to make it quick. So probably 5 years ago, I was at a Housing Works conference, and someone from the school district stood up and talked about an experience that she had had. There was a A young man in elementary school was acting out a lot in classes, getting into trouble, ending up in the principal's office, and the counselor reached out to his grandparent, who is his guardian, and said, you know, is something going on with this young man? He's getting into a lot of trouble in his classes. And she said, well, yes, we had a situation, we missed our rent payment, we ended up evicted, and are living in a restroom in one of the public parks. So it's been obviously a very challenging time. You know, the individuals who are experiencing homelessness in this community range from families like that one to individuals who are chronically homeless. We have a range of approaches that are working in this city. We need, as has been said multiple times, to work together to really raise the resources we need to amplify those. I'll just respond to one of the questions that was brought forward about where we need this housing, and it is throughout our city. We need this housing throughout our city, and we need housing of different sorts because individuals who are experiencing homelessness range in terms of their needs. So,
Councilmember Kazar?
I want to go to the issue of whether or not folks should just be taken off the street. And the issue has been that for over 20 years, we have had a situation where we're trying to take folks off the street and where people get thousands and thousands. There are people who literally had well over 100, over 150 tickets, and it never solved the root issue. Our police officers' job, we can't ask them to do everything. Their job should be to protect our health and safety, and certainly some of the issues that folks have raised are police issues when there is when there's a real threat, when there's any threatening behavior. But when somebody merely is experiencing homelessness, we can't expect jails and policing to solve that issue, but we also can't turn a blind eye and say, well, then there is no one to solve it. There are great organizations doing real work to do the social work and the mental health care and the housing that we need to solve the problem. And that problem I think we all agree on, and what we need to do is use the tools that work to solve the problem to solve it, because clearly just cycling people in and out of tickets, in and out of arrests has not solved that problem.
Let me ask the members of the panel, we have lots and lots of hands, maybe one more round, if we can indulge everybody on that. Question, sir.
Hi, my name's Toby Nunley. I originally am from San Antonio, but moved to Austin 3 years ago. So my first question, if you'll just indulge me real quick, audience, can I see a raise of hands of how many individuals have actually experienced homelessness? So less than 50 in this room. I'll make 51. Back in September, I was homeless in this city. Just as one of the council members said, a series of unfortunate events happened upon me. I lost my job. At the same time, I found out about a health issue. And thank goodness, thank you for the RBJ clinic. Thank you for the wonderful advocates that work there. You are correct. We have wonderful programs that are trying to help. But at the same time, we do need more. Now, my question for you is, you were asked what you would do in the next 90 days. I am a member of the community who has no drug addiction, who has no criminal past, who has nothing against him except for I fell on hard times. If you haven't contacted anyone who has been applying for the ECHO program, I was on the list. Every month, I would move up that list because wonderful members of our community got help. But then I'd get knocked back down because I only had very few problems versus the masses who do have more problems than I. And you know what? That's fair. I understand that. And I was culpable with it. But you were asked what you would do in the next 90 days. May I suggest, if we are already planning on addressing this, if the public wants to see a decrease in people on the streets, and we have the resources already allotted for this fiscal year, why not go ahead and flip the system in the next 90 days for those programs like the ECHO program? Get those who just need that one bit of help that just came on the streets, who isn't complacent in the situation that they're in, and they are really ready to willing to stay at work, continue their job, take care of their kids. Get them off the streets today in the next 90 days because you know you're going to increase funding, and that funding will be able to go to less amount of people without taking away from that funding because we're just, as you said, kicking the can down the road. In the next 90 days, I didn't hear anything that anyone said up here that would actually address the issue. That would address the issue.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Let me just, okay.
Thank you.
I just,
I would like to ask her.
just a very quick question.
Okay.
Very quick.
So I'm a daughter of Mexican immigrants. I'm a former probation officer.
I'm sorry. Only
and
time.
social
A
worker.
question.
Yes, thank you. So the reason I bring that up is because Mr. Mayor says that we're do-nothings people who question what the city is doing, and I'm letting you know what I have done. I have actually housed homeless in my home. I've housed refugee families in my home. But right now, you guys are putting a shelter near low-income, predominantly Hispanic community. You guys are not engaging with that community. These children are seeing active sex acts, drug acts in their neighborhood.
Okay, I'm sorry. Just
Excuse me.
I'm sorry. Just no speak. I understand.
He
Question
just
quick.
had a whole
Question
speech.
I'm sorry. Just question quick because we're running out of time.
So I understand. So you guys have you guys should not be putting homeless encampment shelter near children and seeing this type of activity. Obviously, not all homeless are criminals, but these children, this is not even my community, but these children deserve the right to not have to see men defecating in front of them in broad daylight or having sex with each other.
Okay,
That
got
should be an
it.
automatic
I appreciate it. Sorry, we're out of time. Let me give the men. I'm sorry. Let me get the members of the panel to have a chance to be able to weigh in because we're over our time. Let me ask the members of the panel to try to respond.
So we do have a list that we have as a community put together. We have basically the names of almost everyone that is experiencing homelessness in our community, and we have triaged them as best we can to be able to see the help that they need. The question that's been asked is one that's continually debated within that world. Do you help the person who is most in need, that's closest to dying on our streets? Or do you help somebody where it's the least amount of help that will actually get them back together? And I think that is an important conversation for us to have as a community. It does not have an easy answer. To the woman, I would say thank you for everything that you have done and will do to help people that are experiencing homelessness in the community. It takes all of us in this community to do that kind of work, and I really appreciate that. I also understand the concern that's been raised about if an area that's opened up that takes 30 or 35 people or 50 people, because people are concerned that it's going to look like the Arch, because that's all that people know in this city. I have two answers to that. First, we need to fix what's happening at the Arch because it's not safe what's happening at the Arch. And we have to make sure that every place that we open in our city never looks like that, because we're never going to open a second or a third if the first does. And the commitment that I've made to that neighborhood, and I'll make to all the other neighborhoods, is that when we start opening these, because they do need it around the city, I will go to every one of them every week to be there with the neighborhood to help ensure that none of them look like what we're experiencing at the Arch. And again, we need to be able to fix that. But I would say that what people are saying they're seeing, that their children are seeing, is not something that started happening in June. It was happening around our city now in an increasing way for the last several years. The policy of issuing 18,000 tickets to people who, as you might imagine, don't show up in court the next Thursday to pay their fine is not a solution that is working for us. Moving people from one neighborhood to somebody else's neighborhood is not working for us. As a community, let's make an agreement with each other that we are going to be the city that can look past those kinds of pushing people around and actually solve this. 2,255 people. This is a scale that this city should be able to do something about if we all join together. This could be our proudest moment, and I hope that it is.
Closing remarks. In addition to that, Congressmember Kazar for starters.
I'll just answer the questions as presented, and let other folks close. But I think that for too long we have worked on looking at things as a limited pie, where we either get these small number of folks off the list or this small number of folks off the list. And I appreciate the gentleman's question, because if we actually dedicate the resources that our plans have told us we need to dedicate, then we can get them both off the list. And we need to get to the place where we're getting people off the streets so much faster than they are coming onto them. And one of the questions we weren't able to answer earlier, we absolutely have to recognize that this is correlated with our affordability crisis. Our affordability, if you look at where homelessness is occurring and where because it's so often people that live in that city, it is where there is an affordability crisis. We have to prevent folks from falling into homelessness, and then we have to dedicate the resources to get folks into housing.
Councilmember Tobel.
Thank you again. I want to thank you for coming today. You know, I think this is obviously a very challenging conversation right now. You understand from the comments that we've talked about earlier that we are continuing this conversation and engaging with you. I welcome your feedback about the proposal that we distributed earlier today. I really want to implore you, though, to help us move our community forward in the ways we've identified today. Let's work together on those proactive solutions. Let's be careful as we have those conversations not to equate those who are experiencing homelessness with criminal acts. You know, we have had this conversation and again over the last several weeks. There has been a rash of violence in our downtown. It is not associated. There's not any evidence supporting that it's associated with individuals experiencing homelessness or has anything to do with the changes that were made to the ordinance. I think it's very important that we have this conversation as we move forward about what we want to do as a community, how we're going to work together to end homelessness, that we do it with compassion, that we do it with a forward-looking, proactive eye toward how we work together on those solutions to end homelessness in our community. It is solvable, and if any place can end homelessness, it's Austin.
Councilmember Kitchen.
Just quickly, I would say that we need to keep our eye on the ball in terms of focusing on housing and prevention, as we've talked about. We also need to work together as a community, as my colleagues have said. We need to work together in a constructive, solution-oriented way in which we move forward. We also need to be accurate with our facts. Some of the things that were said by the recent speaker about the shelter are just flat out not true, and we've talked about those before. So I'm happy to repeat that information. I invite you again to look at the information about the shelter. It is not next to schools. It is not next to children. Councilmember Renteria and I have worked very closely with the neighbors in that area. So let me just again, if we're going to solve this problem, we have to move forward. We have to talk about solutions. We have to be constructive. We have to recognize the needs that people need and work with them. And I know that we can do that as a community. And I look forward to working with each of you in that direction.
Thanks so much. And thanks to the members of our panel. Thanks especially to all of you. This is obviously